I will be drawing from chapter 29 in our Moorish Holy Qurans. Brother, you have a copy? Okay. Chapter 29, Prophet's Holy Instructions, Magistrate and Subject. So, in this chapter, or the reason that I chose this chapter, rather, is because we as Moors, Moorish Americans, in this Divine National Movement, when it comes to the topic of quote-unquote civics, being involved in the affairs of men, being involved, and when I say being involved in the affairs of men, I'm talking about having an economic stance, being involved in politics, or economic foundation, and being involved in politics, being involved with other groups and organizations that share the same commonality as far as how are we as an Asiatic nation, descendants of Africans, how are we to progress? When we talk about that, a lot of what we get is doing for self. We want to work outside of the government instead of working within. And the reason that we have a stigma about working within is because of the ideal that the political structure and society is corrupted. The Moorish Americans do not share that sentiment. Our prophet teaches us that there's nothing wrong with the structure of our government. There may be a despot, there may be tyrants, there may be men who have acquired these stations that has taken advantage of their position and operating with the benefit of themselves and not within the interest of the people. Our prophet calls that very action the connivance of the law. The prophet also talks about the insufficiency of knowledge. We have a chapter in our Moorish Holy Quran where it gives an example on how the lawman and the man of power, or the person that is assigned power, how they use and abuse the very responsibility that they're given in a manner that is not progressive to the group, to the organization, to the nation, to the tribe, etc. Moorish Americans, our goal is to be an integral part in the affairs of men. Is to play an integral role in the affairs of men. We as Moorish Americans, it is our responsibility to, if anything, be the liaison between people of African descent and the people that are, and our statesmen, I should say. We look to raise someone up within our ranks, raise someone up within our organization to become a part of the affairs of men. So at this time, we may not have someone that can do that. However, that is the reason why we have the Moorish Science Temple of America. We have the Moorish Science Temple of America so that we may cultivate and that we may develop brothers and sisters and children of African descent, reintroduce to them the concept of a nationality and a creed, reintroduce them to the true and genuine concept of nationality, of unity. Because when we go out there in the chaos of the world, when we go out there in society, there are so many examples on how we are, how we're not together. There's so many examples on how, we may, quote unquote, have knowledge of self. We may know a few things out of a book that we read, but how many of us truly implement those principles? That is the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America, so we can continue so that we may be able to develop these actions, so that we may be able to develop the principles and all of these actions that will make us a valuable asset. Being African American, being a Negro, being a colored, being a Black American, whatever you want to call yourself, there's no value in that. Truth be told. And yes, the Moorish Americans, we do understand the spiritual ideal of what it means to be Black. But we as Moorish Americans, calling ourselves Black in today's society, in the new era of time, to be recognized by other nations, to be recognized by the government in which they live, being Black is saying that you are descendants of an object. Being Black means that you are descendants of property. And we all know that if you're a descendant of property, then you are expendable. That means that there's no true value to who you are. So Noble Drew Ali reintroduces to us nationality, amongst other things, as a way for us to identify who we are, to identify what our purpose is, to be involved in the progression of society. But in order for us to be involved in the progression of society, we have to proclaim our worth. When you proclaim your nationality, you're proclaiming your value in society. Are y'all with me? Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's important for us to know that we are from Father God Allah. As chattel property, we are subservient to the master. We are subservient to the quote-unquote slave master, I should say. So when we trace our names back, we trace ourselves back to the very people that oppressed us. But when you are a Moorish American, you trace yourself back to a society that was a major contributor to progression of the world. Let's think about that. Regardless, and I thought about this in reflection while I was driving here today, because Noble Drew Ali could have named us anything. He could have, with us being descendants of Africans from the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, if you will, he could have picked any portion, any piece of land, any group of people, but he chose more. He chose for us to be Moorish American. Let us think about that for a minute, because during the age of antiquity, all the way up to, I would say, for the sake of argument, 1610, we were involved, regardless if you were a quote-unquote Moor from Morocco or Moor from sub-Saharan Africa. We were involved in the progression of the world. Other nations, other kingdoms, other societies look to us, if anything, as an example on how to be civil, on how to establish a civilization. You see what I'm saying? We knew the importance of civility. We knew the importance of order. Because that's one thing that we have, we are demonstrating a form of inconstancy, is order. Because we'll demonstrate order, we'll demonstrate falling in line for as long as it's beneficial to us. But if we feel some kind of way, if something rubs us the wrong way, or something happens to us, and we feel slighted, we immediately remove ourselves. I mentioned earlier to the sister about establishing a committee. And what is the root word or the key word in committee? Commit. So we as Moorish Americans, being a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America and promoters of this Moorish Divine National Movement, it's important that we have that resolve, that we have a stern and a solid commitment. And that's where that purity comes in. That's where that demonstration of John the Harbinger comes in. He said, before love comes manifest, man must make himself pure. So, when we talk about the structure of who we are as Moorish Americans, before we even begin on talking about being in the affairs of men, we have to know, what is our structure? How do we operate as the Moorish Science Temple of America? How do we operate within our ranks? Islam? So, let's start with this. The Moorish Science Temple of America is not your nationality. The Moorish Science Temple of America helps to develop your nationality as American citizens. And we develop our nationality by way of the Moorish Divine National Movement. If I challenge all those that are within the sound of my voice to research a time where the prophet in his literature used the word Moorish science as the action of this movement, the Moorish Divine National Movement. He constantly reiterates the Moorish movement because that is the action that we must take. The Moorish Science Temple of America helps us to develop that divine and national movement, helps us to develop our Islamism, and that is how that's how we go about moving. That's how we go about establishing power. I've said this before on many occasions. When we talk about power, we're talking about a concentrated element. When we're sick and when we're bedridden and we take medication, we take a concentrated form of that medication. That way we'll be able to combat whatever ailments that we have. We don't send, we don't send 1 or 2 white blood cells to a certain virus. We send a plethora of it because we want to make sure that we stomp that thing out. Islam? And so that is how we are to move as an organization. We are to move as a collective. As the sister said before, we should be going and, if anything, talking to other temples, other Moorish Science Temples of America, and sharing with them what our position is, what our goals are. And if there's even one principle that we can unite under, let's do it. But the Moorish Science Temple of America is supposed to be a united front. We are supposed to be vanguards of humanity. Islam? But in order for us to actualize, that notion, we have to understand the order. All right? So, when we talk about, going back to page 3 of our Moorish Holy Qurans, the Prophet says, know thyself and thy Father God Allah. He says, use these lessons so that you may learn to love instead of hate. And by these lessons, you can put your house in order. The Prophet has given us tools on all fronts, on all different levels. From this very pamphlet that I'm about to read from, to the very contents within the pamphlet, we've received both tools as parables and physical tools. And what is it that a person uses to fix their physical house? They use tools. And not only do they use tools, but they use the right tools. You wouldn't use the same tools that you would fix your house with, or to fix your car with to fix your house. Not all of them. Maybe some of them, but not all of them. So the Prophet gave us the exact tools needed to put our house in order. Because it all starts with self. So before we can begin to galvanize and to bring about order as a collective within the Moorish Divine National of America, we have to make sure that we have ourselves in check. Everyone wants to be Heru, but how many of us want to be Herokuti? How many of us wants to check ourselves by chopping off our head to make sure that we're falling in line with the order of the day before we go out and try to check and chastise someone else? Islam? So let me get into this lesson. Chapter 29, Magistrate and Subject. Islam? Thou the favorite of heaven, whom the sons of men, thy equals, have agreed to raise to a sovereign power and set as a ruler over themselves. Consider the ends and importance of their trust, facts more than the dignity and the height of thy station. Now I just thought it, and we need to stop right there because we need to consider that. Now, that dispels any notion that a sovereign is supposed to be an individual. This verse right here in itself dispels all the concepts of being an individual sovereign. I'm my own person. Not if you follow the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Not if you're a part and parcel of this Moorish Science Temple of America. It says exactly right here, thou art the favor of heaven, the sons of men, thy equals, have agreed to raise to sovereign power and to set as a ruler over themselves. So you are appointed. A ruler in the Moorish Science Temple of America are appointed. I myself, the Grand Governor, Sheik Il, our Lieutenant Grand Governor, Azir Ali Il, we have all been appointed. We have all been appointed from our equals, by our equals, to represent the masses. Islam? As a sovereign power. So that means when we go out into the cares of the world, we represent you. But in order for us to represent you, we have to know what your grievances are, what the affairs that you want to be involved in, so we can properly represent you. Islam? We talk about the body politic. A body politic is literally that. You being a member. This is a member. This is a member. Our legs are members. You are a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So you are a part of this body. So that means you play a specific role in the progression of this movement. But we as sheiks, we are the heads. We represent you. So without, we can't move without the intentions and the blessings of our members, because that will make us tyrants. And that's not what we do. And as a sidebar, what is our form of government? Let me write this down so that everybody is clear. Within the Moorish Science Temple of America, our government is theocratic, constitutional, monarch. That's the H right there. Theocratic constitutional monarchy. It's theocratic because the word theo comes from the Greek word religion or divine. Cratic, when we talk about the people. Democratic, the mass of the people. All right? Constitutional because we have a constitution. We have a covenant that we as Moorish Americans all should abide by. So if you are a Moorish American, you abide by the divine constitution and bylaws. That is one of the key elements that make up a nation. What are you bound to? What is the African American bound to? Let's think about that. In part, we are bound to the American Constitution, but in what form? Because as we define ourselves as Black Americans or Black or African Americans, we only have a small part. We're still considered 3/5 human. You know what I'm saying? So, but as that Constitution, as Moorish Americans, that bounds us to a higher principle. So anytime that we may have a conflict amongst each other, we can defer to this Constitution. We can defer to this covenant that was given to us by the great God Allah by way of our prophet, Islam. And then we have a monarchy, because we have a body of rulership. But that body of rulership is checked by the Constitution, which is checked, or which is reinforced by the people, which is reinforced by our Father God Allah. Why, Sheik, do we have a theocratic constitutional monarchy? Why am I saying that we have a theocratic constitutional monarchy? Where am I drawing this from? Am I saying this to be deep? Did I just come up with this out of nowhere? No, I did not. The reason that I say that we have a constitutional monarchy, a theocratic constitutional monarchy, is by way of the Moorish Divine Constitution and bylaws. Allah, salvation, unity. Theocratic. The Moorish Science Temple of America, the Divine Constitution and bylaws. Act 1. The Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. That defines our theocratic constitutional monarchy. Islam? All right? And it says, consider the ends and importance of their trust, facts more than the dignity and the height of thy station. So you being appointed this role as a sovereign, you being the representative of the people, it is more, you should consider more than just the respect of who you are. You're representing the people. It says, thou art clothed in purple and seated on a throne. The crown of majesty investeth thy temples. The scepter of power is placed in thy hand, but not for thyself. Were these incense given, not meant for thy own, but for the good of thy kingdom. So you were raised up amongst your equals because you were considered to be the best representative of your people. So you received a crown. You received the scepter. And what does that crown and that scepter represent? You know, back in the day, our ancestors used to wear like a wreath. It's very interesting because one of our prophets used to wear a particular wreath as well, right? It may have been a wreath of thorns, but nonetheless, it was a wreath. It was a crown, all right? And that crown, believe it or not, it comes, when we look at the etymology of it, when we look at the word where it derives from, it's encircled. When we talk about a crown, we're talking about something that encircles. So it was a representation of someone having that eternal knowledge, you know, that infinite knowledge. So that's that crown, and him being not only appointed by the people, but appointed by representatives of Allah, because all of us have Allah within us. So for us to be appointed by our own people is for us to be appointed by Allah. And then we have the scepter. When we have the scepter, think about that as the staff. That is the symbol of, when we talk about our elders wearing, when they have their staff, they're holding their staff. You know what I'm saying? That is to prop them up, to assist them. But that's a symbol of wisdom. That is a symbol of understanding. That symbol is saying that you know the importance of the role that you are given. Islam? We go on. Verse 3. The glory of a king is the welfare of his people. His power and dominion rest on the hearts of his subjects. The mind of a great prince is exalted with the grandeur of his situation. He involveth high things and searcheth for business worthy of his power. So that means that the affairs of the king should be the affairs of you. So we can't, okay, let's do this. I challenge you to research these words, because election is coming up soon, and we're supposed to be electing people for these particular offices.
That's right, Sheik.
But do we know what these offices constitute? What is the purpose of these offices? So one of the offices, I believe, is mayor. So we need to look up what are the responsibilities of a mayor. Another one is, I believe, the Secretary of State. Secretary of State. And another one, I believe, is we have certain city councils, councilmen, women. So, what do these definitions mean? Let's think about 8 years ago. We had a president. We were excited about that. Our president is black. But what was his responsibility? He presided over his citizens. So he was a representative of his citizens. He was ruler. He was the governor of his citizens. But how is he to govern his citizens if he is not aware of their affairs? Islam? So let's look up, again, in your own time, let's look up these definitions. Look up governor. Look up lieutenant. Look up chairman. Islam? Because these are the stations, these are our sovereigns. Our sovereign are appointed these particular stations. So how are we to hold these officers to their responsibility if we don't know what their roles are? The grand governor, Allah forbid, could be wilding out, doing things that are not what a governor is supposed to be doing. But how do we know this? Because he's just the grand governor to us, grand gov. What is our responsibilities of the men that we hold as in high esteem and for their offices? This is why the people have to be involved. This is why this is a reciprocal relationship. Our prophet made sure that when he established the principle or established the instructions on social societies, that we know that it is a bond. It's receiving and referring to reciprocal helps. We are bound when we give each other the greeting, whether it's the brothers, the Moabites, or the Moabitesses. When we give the greetings of wisdom, will, and love, that is a representative of a rope, of a wrap, because we're being bound. Islam? 5. He calleth together the wise men of his kingdom. He consulteth among them with freedom, and heareth the opinions of them all. What is that reinforced by? What is that reinforced with? What act in our divine constitution and bylaws is that associated with Islam, brother? Act 2. Act 1 as well. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs. So he consults. So again, we're establishing a construct, a political construct within the Moorish Science Temple of America that has a system of checks and balances to assure that everyone is represented properly. He looketh among his people with discernment. He discovereth the abilities of men and enjoyeth them according to their merits. If I may, the Moorish Science Temple of America is in need of strong men and women that have something to contribute to that can be industrious. The time is long gone for just philosophers. We have enough of those, not just in the Moorish Science Temple of America, but in other organizations as well. When we look at our ancestors, when we look at the Honorable Marcus Mozart Garvey and the UNIA, he had people within his organization that was industrious, that saw his vision, even if it was to a certain degree, and they moved on. They didn't sit and philosophize about certain principles. After the work was done, they had the ability to do that. When we look at other organizations, when we look at the Black Panther Party, they were mobile. They were active. So it is important for us within the Moorish Science Temple of America, within this Moorish Divine National Movement, for us to truly be a part and parcel. A part and parcel is more than just attending your meetings. Being a part and parcel means, what is it that you can contribute to this movement? What have you to contribute to bring this movement forward. Allah does not live in the noise of tongues.
That's long, shit.
All right? 7, his magistrates are just, his ministers are wise, and the favorite of his bosom deceiveth him not. Who is the favorite of his bosom? Who is the favorite of his heart? Subjects, the citizens, the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So that means we have to exhibit loyalty. That falls under purity. In order for us to demonstrate that love and that principle of love, I love you, brother, I love you, sister, we have to exhibit and we have to demonstrate loyalty. That means regardless of what goes down, we have to think in our mind, did it, was it on behalf of the temple? Was it on behalf of that particular individual? Does that thing that I feel slighted with or I'm hurt by, whether another member or another citizen or one of our officials or admin have done, does that affect me or does that affect the movement? If I leave this movement, how would it affect? How would it affect the movement? If I leave the temple, how would it affect the movement? Because it's far too long that, again, we have people that when they feel slighted, they move. But when you have faith of the prophet, when you have faith in this movement, if you are slighted, then you request an audience. Not only do we request an audience, but we look to resolve the issue. Because at the end of the day, we're family. So if it's something that can be resolved by making sure that there's a speedy reparation on either party, then it needs to be done. And then we can continue on. Because we have outside people that are looking at us and that are looking how we move.
Right.
And if they see a chink in the armor, they're going to take advantage of it. They've done it before.
Right.
Look at our history. They've done it several times over. Islam?
Right.
He smileth on the arts. We're on 8. And they flourish. The sciences improve beneath the culture of his hand. Moorish Science Temple of America does have a culture. The Moorish Science Temple of America seeks to extend the culture, to further develop the culture. But the culture can't be developed, can't be advanced without the help of his members. So again, it's, when we look at this magistrate and subject, you know what I'm saying? We're looking at a conjunction. When we think of, with us with our European psychology that we demonstrate from time to time, we think of subject, we think of being subservient, we think of being oppressed. But being a subject is just that we're literally, under the person that we have raised up. But that's not a slight against us. That's not a disrespect to us. Because when we look at the history of our religion, and we look at the history of different forms of our spirituality, we see that the great God, Allah, the creator, however which you want to call him, he had to disperse himself in order for him to be more active, in order for him to be more productive. And in our finite minds, we comprehend that as him in absence of porting certain elements of itself. I believe the word is absentia.
In absentia.
See, I got tongue-tied. But you have different elements of Allah that take on the roles that are subjected to the Most High. Islam? Are y'all with me? We're on 9. With the learned and ingenious, he delighteth himself. He kindleth in their breasts emulation, and the glory of his kingdom is exalted by their labors. In other words, compete towards righteousness. when you're demonstrating the act of emulation, you're striving for a better position. That's when we emulate something. If you look at the layman terms, it'll just say competition. But we're not, in the proper context, it's striving for a higher purpose. Because at the end it says, after he encourages them, the glory of his kingdom is exalted by the labors of his subjects, is exalted by the labors of the citizens. You see how important you are? Now think about I'm on 9. Now let's just remove that. Think about all of that, the opposite that's done. Do you see why we're in the condition that we're in right now? SubhanAllah, glory be to Allah. 10. The spirit of the merchant who extendeth his commerce, the skill of the farmer who enricheth his lands, the ingenuity of the artist, the improvements of the scholar, all these he honoreth with his favor, or rewardeth with his bounty. Our prosperity, or his prosperity, is your prosperity. Point blank, period. He planteth new colonies. He buildeth strong ships. He openeth rivers for convenience. He formeth harbors for safety. His people abound in riches, and the strength of his kingdom increaseth. How are we to extend the learning when there is no effort by the citizens? How are we to push forward this movement if there is an inconstancy of the members? The Sheik staff and the admin staff cannot go about this alone. We need the assistance of each and every member. That burden should not be just put on the officials alone. Because when you get that, you get a vicious cycle of them not even looking to the affairs of the citizens. You look at the current condition that we have today. Instead of the citizens or the members holding the officials to their responsibility. But the officials also have that right to hold the members and the citizens to their responsibility. Because the citizen entails that you have rights and responsibilities. And what are our rights and responsibilities as members of the Moorish Science Temple of America? To be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. Islam? He frameth his statutes with equity and wisdom. His subjects enjoy the fruit of their labor and security, and their happiness consists of the observance of the law. He foundeth his judgments on the principles of mercy, but in the punishment of his offenders, he is strict and impartial. His ears are open to the complaints of his subjects. He restraineth the hands of their oppressors, and he delivereth them from their tyranny. So, when we talk about having a nationality, we talk about having protection. We talk about having protection as a collective from those who look to stifle our development, who look to halt our progression. And this is why we appoint these officials. We appoint these officials to represent the strength that we have as a people. Because his strength is backed by our force, or his power is backed by our force. Islam?
Islam.
And this is important to us because it reads that in order for him to protect our interests, we must abide by the laws that have been given to us. So we can't expect someone to defend us when we're not abiding by the very covenant and constitution which binds us.
That's right.
Y'all with me? Y'all understand what I'm saying?
Islam.
So we can't be a radical Moor. We can't be a rogue Moorish American. I'm going to leave it at that. Islam?
Islam.
He foundeth his judgments on the principle of mercy, but in the punishment of offenders he is strict and impartial. Islam? His ears are open to the complaints of his subjects. He restraineth their hands of their oppressors, and he delivereth them from tyranny. His people, therefore, look up to him as a father with reverence and love. They consider him as the guardian of all they enjoy. Their affection unto him begetteth in his breast, in his heart, a love of the public. The security of their happiness is the object of his care. We are family. When you appoint an official, when you appoint a president, when you appoint a mayor, when you appoint a governor, so on and so forth, you're appointing someone that has the duty of taking care of you, of fostering you. And that principle comes from our great God Allah. Allah, the Father of the universe. The Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. All of that transfers or descends down to this carnal plane to our officials, to our sultans, to our rulers. Islam? It is his responsibility to protect his own. It is our responsibility to protect him. Islam? 17. No murmurs against him arise in their hearts. The machinations of his enemies endanger not the state. His subjects are faithful and firm in his cause. They stand in his defense as well as a wall of brass. The army of a tyrant fleeth before them as chaff before the wind. Security and peace bless the dwelling of his people, and glory and strength encircle his throne forever. We measure time by cycle ages. There's power in the cipher. Islam? We, in the Moorish Science Temple of America, we have order. We have a hierarchy of order. And it is our duty as members of the Moorish Science Temple of America to abide by those principles. We have suffered slavery because we honor not our forefathers, and we follow after the gods and ideals in which we know nothing of. But we do have a Savior, and our Savior is self. We do have a prophet, and that prophet is Noble Drew Ali. And that prophet told us, if I can get you to think, you can save yourself. Our prophet told us, if you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America. But he also said that Moors are men and women, upright, independent, and fearless, who care for their loved ones and follow their prophet to a destiny which is not necessarily their own. Islam?
Islam.
So, with that, family, my final words are fall in, become a part and partial, truly become a part and partial. Before love can take its place, purity must lead the way. Islam?
Islam.
So with that, I ask that everyone rise. Once again, all praises are due to Allah for having each and every one of you coming out here on this holy day evening.